Hello, I'm Dominic Hobson, co-founder of Future of Finance. My guest today is Nadine Chakar, Managing Director, member of the Executive Committee and Global Head of Digital Assets at DTCC, the post-trade infrastructure for the American capital markets. Nadine joined DTCC in December 2023 with the acquisition of the digital asset technology vendor Securrency, where she was the CEO. She was previously head of digital at State Street, where she also served as global head of markets, which she joined after holding senior management roles in the asset management arm of Canadian insurer Manulife and global custodian bank BNY Mellon. Nadine's new role at DTCC has put her in a privileged position to shape the transformation through tokenization of the operating models of every participant in the American capital markets and beyond. And that is what our conversation today is all about. Nadine, thank you very much for sparing the time to be with us.
Dominic, thank you. Thank you for having me, and it's really good to see you again.
I'd like to begin with a quotation from you. 2.5 years ago, back in September 2021, you very kindly came to a Future of Finance webinar on the future of securities services. And in that webinar, you warned financial market infrastructures that, and I quote, "This ship is about to leave the docks here, and they need to jump on board. If they enable our transformation, we will wholeheartedly embrace them, but we can't let them slow us down either." Do you think the DTCC was listening to that webinar?
Got to be careful. Like in this digital age, everything comes back to haunt you. I think so. And in fairness to DTCC and other financial market infrastructure, they've all been on a journey. I actually think DTCC had really kicked off their digital experimentation much earlier than that, in the 2016 timeframe, give or take. But Dominic, I think from the position I was sitting at before, we all tried to experiment, right? So we all set up digital groups, we all did our PoCs, and that goes across Wall Street and across the world. The funny part is now, as I look at this, and I was at a McKinsey forum a couple of weeks ago where they were talking about interoperability, and they were talking about this and that and the other thing, and I just looked up and smiled, and it just dawned at me at this point in time that the route to salvation, if you will, the route to really getting to decentralized market infrastructure is actually through a centralized CSD, which is DTCC. Over the past couple of years, we've done a lot of innovation by press release, right? We did something, we issued that press release, but you look into this a couple of years later, we've made good progress, but it's just not enough for the size and the complexity of the industry that we work with. And, looking at it from a different angle right now, from a DTCC angle, and actually I had a very large client, a very large player on Thursday who said to me, "If you guys can't pull this off, then nobody can." It's a direct quote. And the more I think and reflect and look at the role that DTCC in particular, but other FMIs in the market, in the world could do, I think that's the push we need to move forward. So I would like to think they were listening. I would like to think that we were able to influence where they were heading. I think Frank Lasella and his team's very courageous acquisition of Securrency sort of proves that they're in it to really make an impact and move it forward.
So given that paradox, the route to a decentralized infrastructure is
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, I like that. That'll come back to haunt you as well.
I'm sure it will.
But also that challenge that if you guys can't pull this off, no one can. In terms of concrete steps, what does that mean in terms of the sort of assets you're looking to tokenize now? What sort of assets are we talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question, but I think that hence lay the problem, right? We've been very focused on the assets, right? But I think we've missed a really important step, which is what I aspire. I'm going to use the word aspire because I've only been here for a couple of months, so I still have a lot of consultation and approvals to get to. But for right now, the aspiration in the piece that we've all missed is really building a very solid infrastructure, right? DTCC and others are known to provide the infrastructure in the market for our capital markets today. And what is lacking is a similar infrastructure for digital assets. And that is key. So right now, my focus and the focus of our team in DTCC is to really collaborate with the market and start to build an end-to-end ecosystem. It's not all going to be maintained and created by DTCC, but DTCC is going to provide that impetus, if you will, to start to bring the market together. And then we'll start to build there. And to your point, Dominic, I mean, I think from the assets, it's not going to be a surprise to anybody. We definitely believe funds, and we've been very successful in the work that we've done with WisdomTree Prime, for example, to show that you can tokenize 40 Act funds and be very, very successful at doing that. You can tokenize money market funds. You can tokenize private assets. The tokenization component, I've learned, running Securrency for the time that I have, is not the hard part. The scary part is I can do it. You probably could do it with that phone you showed me earlier. Tokenization is not hard. What is hard is how does that then, how do you embed that seamlessly into a legacy infrastructure, which unfortunately we do need to maintain. It's impossible to think in the near future that 100% of our assets will get digitized. So you still need to have a balance between the old and the new. You still need to risk manage that really well. And most importantly, you can't lose track of the client experience, right? So that's why the infrastructure component is really important. And that's where we're going to double down our efforts. And I have been calling on the industry, and I hope, forgive me, because I'm going to do it again now, right? We shouldn't be competing on infrastructure. Nobody wins on infrastructure. You need scalability, you need resiliency, you need safety. And this is where there's safety in numbers. With all of us collaborating, once we get that infrastructure done, then go out and compete on the strength of your ideas, compete on the features of your product. And that's where I'm hoping that DTCC will lead in that area. I hope I answered your question. I know I went on for a while. So.
No, you have. I'll drag you back to the assets in a moment. Before I do, I'd like to just try and tease out a bit more on that point you just made about we mustn't compete on infrastructure. This must be a public infrastructure. In terms of what that will actually look like, are we talking there of a genuinely public infrastructure? In other words, it's kind of open to all. It might be user-owned, it might be user-governed, but this is a kind of layer, a foundation on which lots of different firms who compete with each other would seek to develop products and services. But you're providing that fundamental layer on which competition can take place. It's like the internet for the tokenized markets.
It's like the internet, but we don't have an internet. We don't want to build an internet. But if you look at what we do today,
I just meant by that it's open and
it is open. We want it to be open. I mean, don't forget, again, it's a very highly regulated industry. So it's got to be open within limits and within the constraints of the legal and regulatory framework. And as long as we're playing in that box and people can hit these high standards, then all are welcome. It's the same concepts that we have at DTCC today, right? Like if you hit certain criteria, you're welcome to come in and clear through NECC or be a member of FIC. We've helped, we're moving the industry forward with T+1. We're doing treasury clearing, which will hit in 2025. So we have been at the service of the industry since our inception. I mean, Dominic, remember 55 years ago, it was the Wall Street firms that actually created DTCC, right, to deal with the paperwork crisis at the time. It was DTCC that moved the industry forward through electronification of security. And it's going to be, I hope, DTCC again, that's going to move the industry forward with digital infrastructure. So the concept right now is, but I'm going to qualify it. It's a qualified yes, because there's a lot of homework that needs to be done. We are working with a lot of partners right now to sharpen that offering. Like everything else in life, it will evolve, but we've got to start somewhere. We need to get people to work together. And when you think about it, we are the market by definition, right? Which is it's a pretty cool position to be in. We have the trust of our clients. We've got the trust of our regulators. And by bringing all these parties together to work together towards a common cause, a common good, I think we can build that infrastructure and with the hope of very securely, right, and within the realms of regulations that we have to start to see more velocity of adoption, because there's a lot of goodness in this technology, and it's not just tokenization, it's the whole digital experience that could be good for people across the board. So that's what we're aiming to do.
Mm-hmm. I think you'll enjoy the cover story in the next tokenization guide we're publishing. It might even come out as early as today, but I'll make sure you see that, because I think it will resonate with you.
That'd be great.
I promised to drag you back to the assets, and drag you back in a particular way, which is there is this debate in the tokenization industry, if I can call it that, between digitally native assets and asset-backed tokens. And my reading of this is that DTCC is pretty clear that digitally native issuance is the desirable end state for the token markets. But you still think that tokenizing existing assets is worth doing because it will yield concrete benefits. My question is, do you ever worry that the current focus on asset-backed tokenization, and that's overwhelmingly what the tokenizations have been done so far actually are, do you think that is going to disappoint, because you don't get all the benefits you do from digital? Is it going to disappoint people so much that it will inadvertently undermine the case for tokenization in general?
That's a great question, and I personally don't think so. I think we need to crawl before we can walk, and this is a massive market. We can't just toss out, like, I don't know what the size is these days. It could be 70 or $700 trillion, whatever, like, it's a big number.
Yeah.
Right. So what we would like to see, so tokenizing real world assets, as people call them, I think is important. And I think we have been able to prove through the work that we've done with WisdomTree that there is goodness and there's benefits. The issue itself, and would love to see more native issuance, because you're absolutely right. I think there is a multiplicative factor of benefits that come there. But Dominic, the issue that I've seen in the work that I've done prior to my arrival here is you can't just tokenize something and then sprinkle a little bit of pixie dust on it and hope that it's gonna yield, it's gonna yield something amazing. There is work that needs to be done in terms of the operating model, the business model of the issuer of these new tokens. And I apologize for going back to WisdomTree Prime, but they're the only firm that I've seen that have had the courage of their conviction, and they have their business, right, which is WisdomTree. They're a large provider of ETFs, and they'll continue to compete and go out and grow that business. But then they also opened up WisdomTree Prime, which is a different model. They moved away from manufacturing asset management product to becoming a distributor of asset manager. They've widened their revenue streams. So they've had the courage to modify their business model to make sure that this new technology yields the benefits that it can. But I've gotten a lot of calls from people going, Nadine, like, fine, we've tokenized this money market fund, but it's expensive because I've got to pay the current custodian, I got to pay the digital custodian, I got to pay the current TA, right? But to push it forward, use it as collateral, use it for capital efficiency means, to be able to move your model forward, that's where you're going to get that goodness. So you're absolutely right. If on a scale to 1 to 10, digital issuance will get us to 10. Listen, if asset-backed tokenization gets me to 6, that's a win, Dominic, right? It helps us move forward. Don't forget, innovation is something that evolves not over days and weeks, but it's decades and centuries in the making. So we've got plenty of time ahead of us, but if we don't start to make a dent in moving forward. So I don't believe it's wasted. There's a lot of education that needs to happen. There's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built, and we need people to feel comfortable using these assets. So investing in education and showing people the goodness of this technology is important. And that's, again, at DTCC, it's part of our mission to try to do that.
Mm-hmm. Back to what DTCC can do to help. You were CEO at Securrency. It's now part of DTCC, and it brings with it, and you were talking about this a minute ago, about how easy it is to tokenize things, but it does bring to DTCC all those token capabilities. It's a blockchain platform. You've got a tokenization engine, a smart contract engine. You can do digital asset custody, programmable tokens. You can store, data on and off chain. It's got digital identity and compliance tools. So it's a full toolkit for running a token business. I just wonder how close the fit you've found since you arrived at DTCC between the tools which Securrency has and the user base, the people who use, the firms that use DTCC today. Is there a strong alignment there?
Dominic, it's been amazing. Like even you mentioned a lot of the firms that I worked at before. This trumps them all in terms of access, not just in the US, but around the globe. I would also tell you that since we announced the deal, the level of enthusiasm within our client base is off the charts. We have been working in partnerships with our clients since literally the first day we announced the deal. And as I told you earlier, like one of a very, very large client and massive in the US market, you know, said to me, we were ready to give up on this whole idea of tokenization until you guys came along. So it's, I think, renewed. It's now, and that creates more pressure on us. Actually, I bumped into Frank this morning, grabbing a coffee, and he's like, Nadine, I know it's only been 4 months, but we've got to move forward. So the good news is, you know, at the leadership levels at DTCC, there's this level of urgency that's there that we need to start delivering for our clients. We want to do this in partnership with our clients. And the beauty of DTCC, Dominic, is, yes, you're absolutely right. We do bring, we're probably one of the very few end-to-end infrastructures for capital markets. We're not attached to any L1s, right? So we actually do sit on top of any EVM compatible and Ethereum virtual machine and compatible structure. And that allows us the unusual nimbleness to be able to work with clients, whether they want to go this big into tokenization and digital or this big, we can work with them to get that done. But with that too, and that's really important, which you don't get in a FinTech setup, is you're getting resiliency, you're getting scalability, you're getting safety, you're getting financial safety. You don't have to worry about us being around in 18 or 24 months, right? So it's given the markets great confidence that DTCC is really starting to look forward. We can afford to look forward in the situation. And we've just got the connections and the backing of our clients, if you will, to build the infrastructure we talked about a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to pick one thing out of your toolkit, which is digital identities. It's surprised us at Future of Finance that the industry isn't much more enthusiastic about this, given the huge sums of money being spent on customer onboarding, the KYC, the AML, the sanctions screening, the counting the financing of terrorism. It's a massive cost, running into probably hundreds of billions on a global scale. I'm surprised that digital assets aren't being adopted wholesale as a kind of solution to that. But anyway, I have the impression that DTCC Digital Assets is very enthusiastic about digital identities. So what part do you think DTCC can play? And I guess this applies to any CSD on the planet, in fact, but talk about DTCC. What part can you play in helping the industry to adopt digital identities?
It's early days, right? Because it's got to be done within the confinement partnership with regulators there. But the infrastructure, Dominic, has already been built. And Dan Doney, our founder at Securrency, he currently serves as the CTO of DTCC Digital Assets. Like since day one, RegTech, as he calls it, regulation technology, has been his focus. And from the first day I met him, I can't tell you how much money we spend and how much of our resources go to the to the most lower denominator here when it comes to compliance, when it comes to identity, when it comes to being able to provide ultimate security around know your client and AML. Now, we don't do that, right? But we create the infrastructure and the tools for other banks to be able, and other providers to be able to do that. And even as CEO of Securrency, I would argue with him, like, Dan, why are we doing this? And he keeps going, that is fundamental. And it's true. We were one of the very first to put out a token that is based on something called the compliance-aware token framework, which is, in my very technical terms, you put the systems in the token. Now, Dominic, when you and I were growing up in this industry, you'll remember we used to have a system for equities, and we have a system for fixed income and one for derivatives, right? Because we couldn't handle the intricacies of the various asset classes. With this compliance-aware token framework, you're actually starting to put the rules in there. And on the digital identity, it will know Dominic is only allowed to trade equities between 8 and 9 o'clock. And he can only, I'll make it up, can only trade the S&P 500. So this level, it is more of a dynamic identity and compliance framework. A lot of people today rely on whitelisting for a lot of this. Whitelisting is done like in one point in time, but it's hard when that token starts to move ownership. You sort of lose track of it, and you got to do it over and over again. The compliance-aware framework actually keeps track of where that goes. So it's a very important, like our entire platform, if I like, and you kindly read off the stack earlier, but our stack sits on, it's compliance first.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk to DTCC, that's the thing that attracted them most about Securrency. It's compliance first, then it's a harmonization and integration layer, then it's data, then it's the smart contract composer that sits on top of it. So everything that we do has been based on compliance first. We will continue to partner with the industry around digital identity, zero trust, not like all that good stuff that would help us make it a more secure and resilient environment. So we tend to lead there. We intend to partner. We intend to invest. We will do what it takes to make sure that the integrity of that market is beyond doubt, because we also believe that would help give regulators peace of mind. It will give clients peace of mind, and hopefully it will push with adoption moving forward as well.
It's an interesting insight that the existing traditional industry silos are an obstacle to the adoption of digital identities, because
it is because there's no interoperability, right? They don't. Yeah. We all throw that word out like it's, it's, you're at a cocktail party, you throw interoperability, you sound really knowledgeable, but the fact of the matter is you can't cross those silos. So what we do have is an industry of, we have a lot of these walled gardens, as they call them. They're filled up pet rocks. And as long as you and I share a garden, we can trade, but you can't cross to your neighbor's wall and do that. And our intent is to try to figure out a way using technology and using the existing rules and regulations that we have to break down those silos.
I'd like to ask you about differences between the buy side and the sell side when it comes to tokenization, and to recall your experiences as head of operations and data at Manulife. You were there for 3 years. You also got to know a lot of asset managers when you were running asset servicing in Europe for BNY Mellon. You've picked out an asset manager earlier in our conversation today. I just wonder what your view is. Is the buy side more excited about tokenization than the sell side? And the reason the buy side might be excited is that obviously it's not a great time for the industry. Their margins are under pressure. Do they see this as a way of cutting cost? Point one. Point two, do they see this as a huge opportunity to create new products, new revenue streams, which can help them to start growing again? So I wonder what asset managers think, and I also wonder what the sell side thinks in your experience. And by sell side, I mean primarily global custodians and fund administrators rather than investment banks. Sure. So what's the balance between buy and sell side in your experience?
So let me start by saying, like, for me, when I look at not just tokenization, but the entire digital ecosystem, for me, it provides benefits to both the buy side and the sell side, as you've defined it, on both sides of the ledger, right? On one side, it could provide with more cost efficiency, and that comes with a lot better controls and less manual work, and capital efficiency. Capital efficiency is really important, especially in this day and age. Cash isn't cheap anymore, right? So it comes with a lot of strings attached to it. And then the other side of the ledger, to your point, it does create more revenue sources, right? The ability of manufacturing and launching products, again, at a scale and a rate that we've never seen before. And I'm going to put a little footnote too, that a lot of people are attracted to digital technology because they think, and I believe that it opens up and makes finance more accessible. We've talked a lot about, as a group, we talk a lot about the unbanked. There's 1.7 billion people in the world that don't have bank accounts, but this technology will make it more affordable to people to be able to leverage the skill sets of professional money managers that historically have been out of reach for individuals. So when I look at the buy side, to your point, they are excited. They put more money. They've done more that I've seen across the board, but they can take it so far, right? Without creating an environment that helps them grow and get benefits from their infrastructures. On the sell side, as you call them, the custodians, listen, custodians are big organizations. Same thing, they're highly regulated. They've got to take their innovation at a more measured pace. And we've seen some be able to push out more than others.
As you say, innovation budgets are not unlimited. Innovation takes time. What incentive do you have to build things that your grandchildren will enjoy? But you're still under pressure to show something tangible, not just you, but
all of us,
your clients, so all of you. And throughout your career, you've always made clear that you measure success in terms of higher revenues, savings, increasing those margins, making the business more profitable. Now, how easy is it to apply those career-long criteria in an industry which is nascent, like digital assets?
I think the same principles still apply, Dominic. If we can't do all this, then there's no point in investing the time, money, and energy to do that. Like we can, if this is a matter of just satisfying our curiosity for something nice and new and shiny, then we can do that in the background. I really believe with every fiber of my body that once this technology is deployed at scale, all the goodness around cost savings, new revenues, capital efficiency, new products that are accessible to people of all walks of life would be a reality. But it's going to take time. And in order for us to be afforded that time, we need to win the trust and confidence of our shareholders that are paying for all this innovation. And we can reward them by being very clear on the mission, showing step-by-step success. And it's been my experience that if you show them what the end goal is, they will come along with you on that journey. But I think transparency is key. Communication is key. Collaboration is going to be key. But most importantly, get very locked on the end state and not get distracted. Because the beauty of it's funny, I'm working on a speech that talks about like how technology has impacted finance. And there used to be once upon a time, like when you came to finance, you're right, you needed to know your formulas, your ROIs, your profit margin. Right now, you got to know your bits and bytes as well as you got to know your. So you're seeing that blending there, and that's the new finance of tomorrow. So what we're doing very much is a part and parcel of that. But it's important to remain focused, clear on message, and deliver. Like the delivery has been key, and I don't think we've delivered enough. For the hype that we've put in this marketplace. It's the unfortunate reality. I mean, there's more. I can't keep up with how many conferences we have. Actually, I've had a buy side client reach me yesterday, and in the text they said, "Listen, we were sitting yet on another panel on tokenization, and it's getting old." So there's a bit of fatigue there from just talking. And this is where I think the DTCC acquisition of Security is a really call to action. Let's get together, let's crack this nut and deliver something tangible to the market.
Now, talking of delivering something tangible, making step-by-step progress, I did see a press release from Citi about a proof of concept they've done with you at DTCC, but also with Wellington and with Wisdom Tree, in which smart contracts were used to automate all stages, including settlement of a securities financing transaction. In other words, this Wellington private equity fund tokenized by Citi was used as collateral for borrowing a Wisdom Tree money market fund. Can you tell me a bit more about this proof of concept? And the reason I'm asking you about it is because repo, securities lending, collateral management has been identified as an early use case for tokenization. I wonder if DTCC see this as a major opportunity in the tokenization area in much the same way as HQLAX and Broadridge have done?
Very much so, Dominic. I mean, you've articulated very well the outcome of that proof of concept, and I'll focus on the last component that you talked about. So we were able to show we've got an amazing tool in our toolkit. It's called Composer. What we set out to show is using smart contracts, you can automate entire financial services transactions or infrastructure. So what we set out here to do is we showed that you can actually automate pretty much every single aspect of the securities lending process. We showed that we're actually not fussed who tokenizes the asset. So as you saw in this situation, it was Citibank that tokenized, but they used our tools to be able to take the new asset and use it as collateral in a securities lending transaction. So we believe that what we wanted to show, for us, it was important to be able to validate that everything that we built actually works in real life. So we did that. And now the next step of that is, to your point, is we've had, and we continue to have a lot of dialogue within the industry about how can you now tokenize collateral in a way that makes it more efficient, both in terms of capital and cost. Now, the problem with collateral, Dominic, and you and I have been around for a while. You remember Lehman and how hard it was to track where all. So the problem we have here is it is untested in terms of law and regulation. What happens during time of stress in bankruptcy around collateral? That is one of the bigger problems that at least I have with how to. So we are engaged with industry associations, with other large buy side and sell side providers to see, can we build something that's robust enough? And to your point, JP Morgan has done a lot of work on repo, on Onyx, so has Broadridge, so have others. But as I said earlier, they're done in their silos. And can we now break those silos and bring it all together? So I'm not looking to reinvent the wheel as much as really opening up an environment where that collateral could be a lot more free-flowing in terms of, so liquidity is going to become even more pressing as we move forward. You got T+1, now the cycles are shorter, you're going to have more clearing that occurs in the future. So looking how efficiently we can do collateral, cross-margining, all that stuff is critical. And again, it's not to the benefit of DTCC, it is to the benefit, not only to the benefit of DTCC, but to the benefit of the industry. And we're working together across the boards. So we will continue. Obviously, you still have to do PoCs, right? You can't go in and bet the farm on something when you don't know it works. But that work with Citibank was really to showcase that the DTCC platform is open. We don't care who tokenizes. We don't care what token formats you use. We don't care what smart contracts you use, and that gives a client indefinite choice. You want to use an open source, format, go for it, right? If you like those pieces of it, but our ability to collate it all together and be able to create something that's automated from beginning to end is priceless. And then think about it in terms of regular securities, right? Smart contract does allow you to automate the entire life cycle of that trade, from dividends to corporate actions to proxies. Think about how many people today and how much energy sits in the middle and back offices that are doing this type of work, where a lot of this stuff can be automated, and that human capital can be deployed to do different work, if you will, in these environments. So that's the promise of this technology, and that's why the Citibank POC was very important to us.
I'm going to have to ask you about interoperability, which you.
Oh, please don't.
We kind of throw this out at cocktail parties, as you said. I think you and I both do that. I'm not sure how many other people do. But anyway, obviously, digital assets issued onto these blockchain networks are going to exist alongside traditional assets on old-fashioned infrastructures for quite a long time. But people will want to port their assets between these different networks. They'll want to transact between these different networks. So what is the solution to the interoperability problem? Is it things like standards or a Swift equivalent in the digital asset space? Or is it this idea which has emerged from the BIS, the Regulated Liability Network, the IMF has picked it up, this unified ledger, this network of networks, a more single programmable platform where everything's can be done tokenized and transacted in and ported in a standardized fashion. What's going to enable that interoperability so that the buy side and the sell side can be indifferent about where an asset is initially issued?
It's a multifaceted answer in one, honestly, that's still in progress. Standards are important. And again, DTCC in partnership with Euroclear and Clearstream, we're working through the next installment, if you will, of the first layer of standards that we introduced back at Cybos last fall.
This
So
refers to the paper you put out with
yes,
Euroclear
so
and Clearstream,
there's
right?
a follow-up to that paper. Hopefully that's going to come out soon.
Mhm.
I think we're targeting either Q2, Q3, so it's coming out soon. But that work continues. As you can see, we're doing it in partnership with the large ICSDs, so we can cover as much ground as we can.
Mhm.
I personally, this is my personal belief, I don't believe there'll be a winner take all. So when people talk about the network of networks, I don't honestly believe that's possible. It goes back more to your analogy of the internet, Dominic, behind the scenes. There are many layers that make up the internet. There's also a popular analogy that runs in the circles here. It's the telephone networks, right? You're on AT&T in the US, you get to the UK, you're on O2, you go to France, you're on Orange, and it works, right? So we need to figure this out. The problem today is we do have bridges and layers and all that stuff, but they're also not secure. If you look at where the weaknesses come in and where the hacks occur and where people start screaming that the technology isn't, it's those chains that tend to create some of that weakness in there. So I think there's more work to be done. And I also, the technology is so nascent, Dominic, that I don't even know if the L1s that are in flight today will be here tomorrow, right? Because there's always going to be this next young person that's going to come in, that's going to put something that's better, faster, and cheaper on the market. I know for a fact there will never be a winner take all. So we know that. We also know there's too much of everything, so there'll be there's going to be a bit of consolidation, and I don't think the right answer has been invented yet. So there's a lot of hypotheses out there, and listen, they all make a bit of sense, but at the scalability that we need, is that the right answer for is really the sequel. It's like a movie. You did part 1, part 2, part 3. Is that really the answer, or is it really building something new that's gonna bring it all together? So I think there's something there with the telecom industry and the internet that we've got to look at a little bit closer. But I don't have the answer for you right now. Part of it is also compliance. Compliance needs to be at the heart of this stuff as well, because unlike a Swift message that goes to you from you to me and vice versa, right? These tokens can go anywhere in the world, right? That's the beauty of the internet. That's the beauty of blockchain. It is these tokens can go anywhere, and you got to be able to keep track of them. They need to get to the right destination. So I think there's more work to be done. I don't think anybody's found the right answer to it. But we will continue to work and engage with everybody until we get there.
Can I just pick you up on that point about compliance? Because regulation is obviously an enabler here, but it's also a brake on progress. And I'm thinking here particularly of Gary Gensler's activities against cryptocurrencies from his position at the SEC, which I imagine creates a degree of confusion in the minds of people. So how would you suggest that the people who want to pioneer tokenization should navigate that difficult balance between, obviously they want to remain compliant, but at the same time, I'm not quite sure where the compliance line actually lies. Are we talking here about making these assets available only to qualified investors, for example? What's the What's the way to strike a balance between the need to innovate and the need to remain compliant, which you've referred to a number of times?
Yeah, I mean, our experience, Dominic, so far has been, and as you know, in the U.S., we've got many regulators that have different parts of jurisdiction over this technology and these assets, right? You've got the CFTC, you got the SEC, you've got the Fed, you've got the OCC, FINRA. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few, but I'll go back to our experience with WisdomTree, and this is where we were still Securrency, not part of DTCC. And the first authorization to launch the first tokenized 40 Act fund. Now, as you know, in our markets here, 40 Act fund is the most regulated fund that you can put on the marketplace. It took us maybe 2 to 3 years working in partnership with the SEC, and we got there, right? So, and it's a part of it was educating them. Part of it was listening to what their concerns were. Then we went and did modifications to the platform to address these concerns. And I just lay all this. Now today, when we launch a new fund for WisdomTree, it's exactly the same time it takes to launch a normal fund, right? It's the 75 days that usually you file and you do all that stuff. So that's a long way. So this is my way of saying there is a path forward. And sometimes we use the lack and murkiness of regulation as a crutch. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at BlackRock and Fidelity, they got the spot Bitcoin ETF approved. And all I'm trying to say is that when we do partner with our regulators, we listen to their concerns, we adapt to their concerns, you do have success. Now, is it a lot more work than it needs to? You know, maybe. But the fact of the matter is we get to where we need to be. And my objective too here, the work that we want to do at DTCC is hopefully work with our regulators to, get them more comfortable, if you will, and for us to really test the hypotheses whether we actually do have everything we need to be able to move forward. And if we don't, then we'll work in partnership with them to get that done. So I think the regulation listen, it doesn't make things easier, but it's not the impediment that everybody hides behind. At least it hasn't been my experience.
Still a bit more work to do, I think, to make Mr. Gensler happy with those Bitcoin ETFs. But
so,
you don't need to comment on that.
He approved those ETFs, and that was great. He's also approved the Bitcoin, the 40 Act. He's also approved Franklin Templeton. So they have when we can get them comfortable with securing the safety of the end user, I think they've moved forward. But it's, listen. Our rules and regulations, Dominic, have been built over decades and decades, right? Like to change everything else in a couple of years is also not reasonable. So we've just got to work with everybody. And this is why education and comfort, giving people comfort that we're not doing things that are crazy. Listen, I'll share this, and maybe I shouldn't share this publicly, but as you noted, I've worked in regulated financial industries for all my life. I was blessed to run, if you remember, our Dutch bank, our Belgian bank, our UK bank at the time. So there is, and I exaggerate to make a point, but there's a concern that when FinTech comes in, and right, there's a lot of rhetoric, like FinTech they're gonna take out the banks and they're gonna take out CSDs, and right. And the fact of the matter is, I think reality has shown that FinTechs alone can't do anything, and the bigger, larger regulated institutions need a little bit of creativity and oomph to it. And it's proven that when you bring both parties together, you move forward, which has been helpful. And again, hence the Securrency DTCC combination. So that's been helpful. And then, old dinosaurs like me that have that have the framework of that control regulatory framework, bringing it into a FinTech environment has also been very helpful to give people confidence that we're doing things the right way, we're building it right, we're being in compliance. We care about regulations deeply, and we want to make sure that whatever product we put on the market, it's more than do no harm, right? Like it goes beyond that. It's do better as we move forward. So it's going to take time. We can't throw out 40, 50 years of regulatory framework over 2 to 3 years. Other countries have done it, but other countries don't have the size and scale that you have in the US capital markets.
You have spent your life inside regulated institutions, but also institutions which have to compete. You're now inside an organization which is it is the key infrastructure for the American capital markets. It's a kind of user-owned, user-governed model. It's enabling other people to compete. So it's going to be culturally different from where you've spent most of your career. And I think you've answered this question, but I think you're saying that the great thing about DTCC is it's in a very powerful position to make things happen in tokenization in a way that these closed networks, you refer to that as well. If you're JP Morgan, you want to keep the assets and the transactions in your own network. You don't want to share them with people. So am I right to think that you're kind of glad to be at DTCC because you want to make things happen here, and actually you're in a very good position to do that because of the nature of DTCC itself?
You're spot on, Dominic. When I took over at Securrency, it didn't take me long to realize that our ambitions to change the world. When I'd sit down with Dan and we would think about like how our technology would change everything. It was very short in my tenure that I realized that alone, despite the fact that we had phenomenal technology, it would have been very hard for us to make the dent. And even if one of the big custodians, launched our platform, right? So being at DTCC, you are the market, right? And our mission here is to really help our clients move forward through the strength of technology, which is exactly, and I may be butchering the vision a little bit, but I'm close enough of the intent here. Is we want to partner with our clients. We want to enable their business models through technology. And this is the perfect mix. But I'll also tell you, within DTCC itself, literally, we're getting, I'm getting an outreach from the teams within DTCC, right? Like the teams that process all the ETFs in the marketplace or the private markets, or do the clearing. And they're all very excited to figure out how does this digital technology can be embedded in their own businesses today, so they as well could embed empower their organization to help their clients. So I am super excited to be here, Dan and the entire Securrency team, because we finally fulfilled our dream and our ambition to be able to change the markets for generations to come if we're successful. I have been overwhelmed with the warmth and the enthusiasm of the DTCC. I think you called them lifers or long timers, but they have embraced this technology at a scale that honestly, I was afraid that we would be actually a foreign body coming in. But no, they've embraced us very warmly, and they're looking to use this technology right now to be able to modernize their own offerings to their clients. So, I will close where I started. Like, if we can't pull this off, then nobody can. When I look at the commitment of our board, our executive management team, and all 5,000 people at DTCC, and I'm not exaggerating, the amount of support we're getting is just off the charts. And I think that is good news for the industry, our industry at large, not just in the US, but I think across the globe. And I think it's great news for the promise of this new technology. So we're all in it together. We are going to give it our all. And I do hope that the industry will heed our call and come to collaborate. Listen, there's going to be competition. That's always the case, and we love it. But I think also a good dose of collaboration is what we need to take this over, to take the hill here. And I know we can. So that's our hope and ambition. And I don't know, maybe next year you and I could touch base again and see how close we've gotten.
We will definitely do that. But just one final question for you, Nadine. Just looking forward, what would you say are the priorities now? You mentioned that you're going to update the paper you released at Sibos last year with Clearstream and Euroclear. An interesting paper that expressed a degree of exasperation with the endless number of pilot tests and PoCs that innovation by press release you referred to, and it also talked about interoperability, which we've touched on. Maybe the way to answer my question about what your priorities are, say what's going to be in that paper.
I can't release what's in that paper yet, but I think it's a good continuation of further developing the themes that we tease out in the first paper. So we're in the mode of consultation right now with a good chunk of the industry. And as I said, I mean, we're aiming to hopefully either in May or June try to release it. So, and we'll open up a dialogue there. The second priority that I have is to start to release our products. So we will continue to market our products on a standalone basis, but now under the label of DTCC Digital Assets. So we're excited to do that. I know I'm going to eat my words right now, but we're also looking at a couple of proof of concepts that take the thoughts of liquidity and collateral and other things into consideration. And the last thing that I'm hoping to do at some point this year is DTCC had something called they had a test environment where people could come in. It's called testnet. They used to come in and we would allow them. We would give them access to blockchain, a couple of tools, so people could come in and experiment with digital technology to see if it was fit for their business cases or not. We intend to release something at a much broader scale that would be something where, as an industry, we come in and work on common problems and try to solve them. So that's part of the collaboration effort that I talked about. That's still in the earlier stages of thinking through that, but hopefully we will have some news to share in early towards the end of the summer, early fall, as we get make some progress with the other priorities first. But that would be the big reveal, if you will, to try to bring the industry together so we can deal with some complex problems, solve it once and for all, and start to open up the road towards adoption.
Well, Nadine, I look forward very much to catching up with you again at the time of the big reveal. But for now, I'd just like to thank you very much for sparing the time to share all your experience, all your knowledge, all your ideas, and indeed all your enthusiasm with the members of Future of Finance. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. See you later.